Hi guys, welcome once again to Otto's Garage. Well, hot on the back of fitting the handbrake mechanism there, we're now looking at some more internal systems, and this time it's going to be a bit of wiring and hopefully some brake lines as well. But anyway, we have had a delivery of some parts again. Right, what's arrived here is some cabling. So we've got some heavy duty earth and some heavy duty mains cable, and then we've got a whole load of little cables there, and we've got some convoluted sleeving. So basically we're starting to have a look. Oh, and the other thing is we've got a battery box in there as well. So just starting to lay out a few cables and see what we're going to have going where. That main snake of cables there is going to be going back to the pumps and the rear lights in the back, and the fuel sender gauge as well. So I need about 9 or 10 different feeds on that. And then we're going to have a battery located in there behind the passenger seat is what I'm hoping on that. I am going to drop the passenger seat in just to have a quick look and check that we're going to have enough room between the back of the seat and the battery box. So I think we might just do that now. I do love these seats. I'd forgotten just how good they look, and they are going to look absolutely stunning once we've got all the systems in place and we can get those seats bolted in. Happy days. So with the seat in, that position for the battery box isn't going to work because it's too tight to the seat, and that seat's not mounted at the moment, but I just think the seat is going to be too far back and it's basically fouling on the battery box. So I was trying to keep the weight low. I don't really want to fit it up here, but I think what we will do is a handy ledge down here, and I think we're going to lift that up like that. So we've still got it kind of keeping the weight down, but it means I've got a decent amount of space at the back of the seat there. So I've just got to make a little bracket up and something for it to sit on, and then we can bolt that in its place. Right, so I've just cut a bit of the 25mm flat, 25 by 1.5mm I think that is, put a couple of bends on it. So these two are going to sit down on the floor. We'll bolt those down to the floor, and then they'll come up under the battery box and then up at the back where that little shelf was. So we'll just bend the back ones there, right? Dead simple on that bender. And then we should have ourselves a pair of brackets like that. So now, when the battery box is involved, this one will bolt back up onto the little shelf, and then the battery box is going to sit on there, and the other one will go down onto the floor. So we'll get that offered up in the car. You can see those little brackets there now, so that's where she's going to fit nicely. So what we'll do is we're going to bolt it into the back through that chassis cross member there, and then we'll bolt it down onto the floor as well. So I'll just grab the battery box, and you can just see how that's all going to kind of work out really with the battery box in place. And that is basically going to sit like that. So that works quite nicely, and it does give us a bit of room from the back of the seat away, but it's trying to keep the weight down as well. I didn't want to mount it up in the boot. I mean, you can see there you've got a step up onto the back where the rear seats would normally go, and then there's another step up onto the boot. So if we mounted the battery up in the boot, she'd be quite high up, and I want to try and keep the weight down low. So that's how the battery box is going to be positioned. So now we've got to drill some holes and get some bolts fixed. What I've done now then is that's our straps that we've bent up in place. And I've just put a couple of riv nuts in the back there. These are going to be bolted through to the floor. But what I'm going to do now is when we offer up our box on top, I've just put those bolts in the back down there for now, so the heads are proud. But I want to bolt through the battery box into the chassis, so that's going to hold that tight, and then we'll put another couple of bolts in down into the strap at the front end. But you can see now, because I've done that, you can see where the bolts are. They've cast a shadow in effect. So now I can mark the battery box on the inside here, and then we can transpose that dimension and drill a couple of little holes in it. If you're doing any kind of body work, you know, drilling through sheet metal, I would really seriously think about getting one of these step drills. They're absolutely fantastic. Starts off as a 4mm hole, works up in 2mm increments, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Yeah, I can count. Really good bit of kit. I've got that battery box in now, just for the trial fitting. Obviously what I want to do is take the brackets off and paint them, but let's just have a quick look. So that's the feet bolted down there, and I've just rounded off the edges of these corners here because that just makes it a little bit nicer. And then inside you can see we've bolted down to the straps, and those are the back two that go into the wall, into the box section. So that's looking pretty good. It's obviously loose at the moment. I haven't bolted it all down, but that is going to be very firm when that's all tidied up. So what we need to do now is take those brackets off down the bottom there, and they can have a lick of paint, and then I can bolt that in, and we're ready to go for getting some main cables to her. Yeah, that's good. Just a bit of a tool tip for you here. When you're making brackets and things like that, and metal work, obviously you need to kind of grind off the swarf and things like that, and most people will use a bench grinder like this. Now the great thing with a bench grinder is that you can get in there and you can, this one's got a grinding wheel one side and a wire wheel the other. So I use this a lot for cleaning stuff up, but obviously where we had those brackets and I've taken the corners off, you can just round it off on the grinding stone there. One bit of advice I would say is when you get one of these, don't get one which is too powerful, and that might sound a bit silly. And the reason being that they are very snatchy. So you're working on something and it can pull it in, pull the workpiece into the wheel. Now, if it hasn't got a lot of power on it, it'll just stall it. If it's a really powerful one, it can pull your fingers in as well. So that's just a bit of a top tip that my mate Phil gave me when he was building his rally cars. They don't need to be super powerful. When it starts to stall, you just pull the workpiece away and let it get back up to speed again and then revisit it. But it's better than losing your fingers. So there's the battery box. So got some nice little socket caps down here where we're going to see them, but inside the battery box, we'll just pop the lid off. You can have a look in there. What I've done there is I've just used hex heads for these, and the reason for that is that they just take up a little bit less room than the socket caps. The socket caps do tend to protrude a little bit, so that is really firm, which is exactly what you want for a battery box basically. So our next thing is going to be, obviously the lid on it at the moment is just, you know, to sit on there. These little notches here are for the positive and the negative terminal. But what we'll do is we're going to mount it that way round, and then we'll bring the cables in around the back, basically. But what I do need to do as well is we'll have to drill this through, and it'll need some bolts just to hold the lid down as well. And then that will be that basically. So that's cool. I'm liking that a lot. I've just routed the main feed in under the chassis rail, and that's the original position where the loom used to go. And then we'll bring that up around the back. However, on our main loom, the one we talked about earlier, about it where it goes to the back of the car, I'm going to fix that on top of the sill there, and that's really just in case we do need to lift it out at any time and we haven't got to mess around trying to feed it through the chassis rails all the way through. So that's our first start of electrics, which is good news. Okay, so we've got a few little bits that have arrived. These are the bearings that we were after, and you can see in there that they've got those much needed holes for the oil, which is going to go through from the crankshaft up into the bottom of the conrod. So that's ideal. They're American bearings, and I've had to get them from Latvia, I think it was. But in any event, happy days. And they were like 24 quid, so I'm not complaining. That's pretty good. Another thing we got here, we have the FIA cutoff switch, so that's got all the correct terminals on it that we need for the stop. And then we're going to put a pull into the wing, and I'll show you that a bit later on anyway. And then the final thing that I've got here is this is off a Volkswagen T5 van, and it is basically the connector, which when you shut the sliding door, it gives power into the door itself. So basically these are spring-loaded connectors, and they shot against the terminals here. What I'm going to do with these is mount these in the boot, so that basically we've got power to the lights at the back of the boot, because we have got a number plate light in there which we need for MOT purposes. And it then means that we don't have to have wires running up around the hinge mechanism. So it's just trying to keep it simple, really. So I've got a pair of those, and that gives us 4 terminals. I think I need 3 in there anyway, so that's ample for that. Right, let's just take a look at where we're going to fit that emergency electrical pull handle, basically. And this is the kind of thing I'm talking about. So basically, you have one of these, which is in fact like a push bike cable, and that connects through so that when you pull the handle, it basically disconnects the switch which we looked at earlier from outside the car. So basically this is going to be mounted in the car somewhere on the dash, and the little red key that goes in the end of it will be attached to the end of this, which is the release cord. So basically what happens then is that as the handle is pulled, the key is twisted round by means of the cable, and it disconnects it and knocks all of the charge off, so there's no pumps or engine or anything. Basically it kills the engine stone dead in an emergency. Now I quite like the idea of mounting this in the wing, and I got this idea really from a magazine I used to get called Street Machine back in the 80s. Yay. And what they used to do is they used to what they call French in lights and little switches and things like that into a panel. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut a recess in the wing here. I've checked behind and we've got enough depth, and then I'm going to glass in a little tub. So basically that is going to get recessed into the wing, and then the handle will be hidden down in that tub. It'll make a bit more sense as we go along. Let's take a look. We can see there behind, basically we want to try and get through here somewhere with the cable. So that little tub will be mounted in the wing back there. So I just need to do a little couple of bits of dimension off the leading edge of the door, just so we can get that in approximately the right place, and then we can make a hole in the wing. I've marked that out, so now we're basically looking, the centre of the hole is going to be about here somewhere. So our little cup, which is going to be Frenched in, is going to sit something like that. So what I need to do now is get a hole saw about the right depth. I don't want to go the full depth of this because that'll be too deep, but I'll get a hole saw, just come back down it maybe to here somewhere, and then what we'll do is we'll cut the wing and drop the cup in and just see what she looks like. Okay, you can see there, I've just basically fitted our mould and take that back to the wing, and you can see on the inside now how that's going to work. So what I've got to do now, and this is obviously the side we're going to be glassing, what we've got to do now is just put some PVA adhesive on there, and that'll act as a release agent, and then basically we can glass it up and it should come out again afterwards without sticking to it. That's the theory. Okay, so normally when you're fiberglassing a roof or something, you put the chopped strand matting down first, that's this stuff, and resin it on, and then you put a top coat on top to make it smooth. But obviously in this instance we've got to work the other way around. We've got to put the top coat on first, which is our smooth coat that you'll see, and then we'll put our chopped strand matting reinforcement on top of that. So I've just mixed up a bit of, this is actually roofing top coat, but not a problem, it'll come out grey obviously. But at the end of the day, we're not really fussed about that. We're going to paint it, and then we're just going to give that a coating of the top coat on top of there, and that will be what we're basically going to see. So it'll keep it a bit more smooth basically when we actually come to crack the mould out afterwards. So that's going around there, and then I'm hoping that should go off quite quickly because I've used a fast activator in it. So the catalyst that you add to it, you can get standard or you can get fast. Obviously in the workshop it's great to use fast because we're not hanging around then. So we'll give that a decent coat, and it does come out quite smooth, see, so that's the good thing with it. And then once we've coated that up, we can then move on to the in effect the base coat, which is going to be the top strand matting reinforced with the resin. So I want to be reasonably thick. There's a little bit of fiberglass in there, but that's fine. Good, okay, so I'm going to let that go off for a little bit. That won't take too long, and then we can move on to putting the matting over it. Right, so what I've done now is I've just drilled a hole in the back. We've stuck a washer on it, fed the cable through, and then there's a corresponding hole through the wing there. And you can see that goes right the way through into the engine bay. And then we're going to feed that through that big hole down there into the bulkhead. So that's going to come through here, basically. And that's it on the car. So basically, we've now got a smooth surface with the recess, and in there they can pull the ignition. So you could do something similar if you wanted to have a inbuilt fire extinguisher, but for hill climb we don't need external fire extinguisher release, and I just wanted to keep it nice and clean, so that looks really good like that. Yeah, I'm very happy with that. That's come out well. Kaboosh!